I can hear the thoughts of the Empire's most powerful general. When I'm in morning court, he thinks, His Majesty looks so proper and dignified. It's making me restless. When I'm traveling incognito among the people, he thinks, I just want to tie His Majesty up and take him back to my mansion. And when I'm about to go to bed, he strides right into my chambers, thinking, This little thing is far too tempting. Help. The general is not only into men, he's also blatantly disobeying his emperor. At this very moment, I had just returned from morning court and was buried in state affairs. A mountain of memorials was piled high on my desk. I let out a weary sigh. A eunuch entered hurriedly from the door. Your Majesty, the Lord General has arrived. Let him in, I said at once. My spirits lifted. Lord General Gideon Ashford was one of the very few people in court I could truly entrust with my back. At last, I'd be able to unload at least half of these memorials onto him. But the moment Gideon stepped into the room, I stood to greet him, and perhaps because I'd eaten too little at breakfast or for some other reason, my vision went black. My knees nearly gave out. Startled, Gideon strode forward in a flash and caught me in his arms. Your Majesty, are you all right? His Majesty's health is so frail, he always looks like he's about to fall over. I froze. What was that voice just now? Did your Majesty hurt yourself? Gideon asked. His handsome, austere face betrayed no emotion, his tone cool though concerned. I shook my head, steadying myself. Surely I'd imagined it. I opened my mouth to speak about the memorials. Yet the strange voice came again. He'll have to handle state affairs today. I must be diligent. His Majesty's body is so weak. It seems he didn't sleep well last night. I'll stay with him all day and handle as much as I can. At this rate, I'll have to train up more elite palace guards to protect him. I stared at Gideon, sitting upright, cold and beautiful, in the quiet study. Only the two of us were here. Could it be I was hearing Lord Ashford's thoughts? Gideon frowned slightly under my gaze. Your Majesty feels unwell? I quickly sat back behind my desk and forced my voice to remain steady. No. In truth, my mind had gone blank. Gideon said my body was weak, that he would handle my memorials, even train more guards. Did the man I trusted most want to eliminate me? I had no idea why I could suddenly hear his inner voice, but I wasn't about to expose it. I'd observe him for now. As usual, Gideon walked to my desk, picked up half the memorials, and placed them on his own side. Allow me to share your Majesty's burdens, he said, seating himself nearby to review the papers. His expression was unreadable as always, but his thoughts were anything but calm. The Chancellor's petition to strip me of military power, ridiculous. Rejected. The Minister of Works is urging His Majesty to take more consorts to ensure an heir. I haven't claimed him yet. Why add rivals? Rejected. The envoy from the neighboring kingdom sent some dragon fruit. Last time, His Majesty got the runs from the dragon fruit that man sent. He dares to send it again. Rejected. I dared not make a sound. In the brutal struggle for the throne among the 9 imperial princes, it was Gideon's sword that carved a path of blood for me. Without him, I would never have ascended. After my coronation, I immediately named him Lord General and kept him at my side. We were comrades who had lived and nearly died together. Or so I thought. And yet, was he now plotting rebellion? I'd entrusted every major decision to him, even full command of the army. He had also persuaded me that given the current instability, taking wives or concubines was unwise. I believed him. My palace had no empress, no heirs, so that was why he never wanted me to marry. He didn't want me to have a successor. He meant to uproot me entirely. But I hadn't treated him poorly. Why would he want me dead? Did he intend to take the entire empire for himself? If so, perhaps I should simply give it to him. He grew up in the army, and with all military power in his hands, my death would be a matter of moments. Better to abdicate voluntarily. Maybe he'd spare my life for old time's sake. Swallowing hard, I decided to test him first. Lord Ashford, I said, I have a question. He paused his brush, looking up. Your Majesty? Well, what do you think of my glorious realm? I think it magnificent. Your Majesty governs wisely, he replied. It truly is magnificent, but the only thing I desire is... His inner voice cut off. Desire what? Lord Ashford, you've worked tirelessly, sharing my burdens. If there is anything you wish for, speak it. If he wouldn't say it in his mind, I'd make him say it aloud. Your Majesty, there is nothing I want. I only wish to ease your worries. What I want is you. Me? My life. Is that it? It's over. My most loyal general wants the Emperor dead. What do? I continued to stare at Gideon Ashford. lost in thought, trying to figure out how I could convince him to spare me. Gideon seemed to sense the unease on my face. He rose, walked to my desk, rested his hands on the surface, and looked down at me. "Your Majesty, is something troubling you?" His Majesty's face is so pale. He looks unwell. Is he stressed about the reports? Nothing. Nothing at all, I stammered, avoiding his gaze. I'm just a little tired and thought I'd rest for a bit. Your servant will escort your Majesty to bed. At this point, I dared not refuse. I was terrified that a moment of displeasure might lead Gideon to stage a coup right here, ending my fragile existence. Very well. Gideon gently guided me, step by step, toward the bedchamber. Why is His Majesty always so frail? With a body like his, he should be confined to a small room and kept away from all work. He even wants to hold me captive. Is there anyone who can save me? Seeing me settled, Gideon covered me with the light blanket, offered a respectful bow, and withdrew from the chamber. As I watched him leave, his inner voice surfaced again. I'll go back and finish the reports His Majesty left undone. I'll handle more of them. I lay on the bed, tossing and turning, frantically trying to devise a plan to ensure Gideon let me live. I couldn't come up with a single good idea, and my brain felt so exhausted that I eventually drifted off to sleep. It wasn't a peaceful rest. In the dream, I was back in the bloody fight for the throne. As I stood in a pool of blood, I looked to Gideon beside me, and he smiled. I then turned and walked towards the dragon throne. Just as I felt a surge of joy, a long sword plunged into my abdomen. Blood instantly gushed out. I looked down in disbelief at my skewered body, then turned my head with difficulty, meeting Gideon's cold, indifferent gaze. I stared at him in horror, but he simply stepped over my dying body and walked toward the throne. My heart felt instantly ripped out. He turned, sat on the throne, and I died right in front of him. No, stop! I bolted upright, waking from the nightmare. The pillow behind me was drenched in cold sweat. Gideon, who was in the adjoining study, rushed over the moment he heard my cry. Your Majesty, what happened? Seeing me covered in sweat, eyes wide and hollow, sitting alone on the bed, Gideon quickly sat down and pulled me into his arms. It's all right, Your Majesty. It's all right. Your servant is here. I'd been plagued by nightmares since the war for the throne, and while they were always about the crown, being killed by Gideon was a first. I felt a sudden, profound inability to cope. What do I do? This breaks my heart. Breaks his heart? I peered out of Gideon's embrace, looking at him in confusion. That didn't track. If he hated me and planned to kill me, wouldn't he be delighted to see me suffer? Why would he feel heartbroken? Did Your Majesty have a nightmare? He asked. He gently touched my face, his eyes filled with churning emotions. I shouldn't have let His Majesty see so much bloodshed back then. Now look, he has lingering trauma. I need to slowly help him overcome this. Ah, yes, a nightmare. It's nothing, I'm used to them, I answered, my lips barely moving. Would it help if I slept next to His Majesty? What? What was going on? Gideon's outward demeanor was completely calm, but his inner thoughts were anything but. He seemed to bear me no ill will. Did I misunderstand something this morning? I couldn't let this go. If it was a misunderstanding, it needed to be cleared up, and I wasn't the type to keep things bottled up. I looked up into Gideon's deep-set eyes and took a deep breath. General Ashford, are you going to kill me? Asking what was on my mind without filtering it was a bold move. Of course not. Has Your Majesty been confused by sleep? Gideon frowned, unable to comprehend why I would ask such a question. I have to protect him. Why would I ever hurt him? I breathed a sigh of relief at his genuine response. It seemed Gideon really had no intention of killing me. That inner thought from the morning, I want you, probably didn't mean he wanted my life. General Ashford, do you think my body is weak? Your Majesty is in the prime of his life. There is no question of weakness. He skips meals while dealing with state affairs, so his body is absolutely weak. I must ensure His Majesty regains his strength. Then, how is the Imperial Guard training progressing lately? Everything is normal. We've selected 30 men for advanced training as elite soldiers. They must be well trained to protect His Majesty. I also need to assign a few hidden guards to constantly protect him. If I'm ever away and something happens to His Majesty, they'll inform me. If only I could live right beside His Majesty, then I wouldn't need any darn hidden guards. A sudden warmth spread through me as I listened to Gideon's thoughts. It turned out his idea to train the Imperial Guard this morning was simply to protect me better. He even wanted to personally guard me. I could cry. He was so devoted. Then why won't you allow me to take consorts? At that, Gideon's face instantly darkened, startling me. Your Majesty, I believe you should prioritize state affairs at the moment. Matters of the inner court can wait. I finally get to spend time with His Majesty every day. If those women come in, they'll inevitably reduce the time I get to see him. It's so irritating. Huh? He said with a straight face that it was for the sake of the court, but really, he was just afraid of not seeing me? I finally understood. The whole morning had been a huge misunderstanding. Gideon had no desire to steal my throne or kill me. I let out a long breath, my entire body relaxing. Did Your Majesty have that same old nightmare again? I nodded, then shook my head. Close. But in the dream, General Ashford seemed like a stranger to me, and he finally stabbed me through the heart with the very sword he used to put me on the throne. The memory of Gideon's cold look in the dream still terrified me. Your Majesty, dreams are often the opposite of reality. Your servant will use that sword to protect Your Majesty for a lifetime. Gideon gently grasped my hand, offering quiet comfort. It must be those wretched reports that have affected His Majesty's spirits. I need to start coming earlier and clear more of them. I twitched my mouth. I felt a sudden deep pity for the poor ministers whose reports Gideon now secretly hated. With the misunderstanding resolved, my mood soared. Gideon truly was on my side after all. I stretched, then looked at Gideon with a cheerful smile. I'm a little hungry. Let's have a meal. I want General Ashford to eat with me. Of course. I must ensure His Majesty eats well. I'll come every day from now on just to watch him eat. I twitched my mouth again. That might not be necessary. I ate with great relish, now free of worry. Gideon was still looking out for my welfare, but as I looked at the meat overflowing in my bowl, I honestly felt stuffed. In the morning, I was jostled awake by Gideon Ashford. Your Majesty, it is time to rise for the morning court. His Majesty's face looks so soft. It seems he stayed up late handling state affairs last night. My heart aches for him. I truly wish I could let him sleep longer. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was met with Gideon's intense, almost adoring gaze. Bring my court robes if you would. It had been some time since I first gained the ability to hear Gideon's thoughts, and I'd noticed they almost always revolved around me. He genuinely seemed to care, constantly telling me to eat more, worrying if I was ill, and frequently calling me cute. While none of this ever showed on his cold, handsome face, his true feelings were completely exposed to me in his mind. Gideon prepared the washing water with the palace maids, while helping the still drowsy me into my robes. We were long accustomed to this level of intimacy. Before the late emperor died, the palace was outwardly calm, but inwardly fraught with danger. During that period, the only person I could trust was Gideon. For a time, we slept in the same room, separated only by a folding screen. During the most perilous days, Gideon personally took charge of my clothes and meals. It wasn't until I had successfully taken the throne that he returned to his own general's manor. However, I could never manage to wake up for morning court, so Gideon made it a daily routine to come to the palace and rouse me. His Majesty's body is so soft. I really want to touch him. Before I could process the thought, Gideon's large hand lightly grazed my waist. Gideon, that tickles. His Majesty looking like this. Only I am allowed to see it. Hearing his thoughts declare such ownership made me feel incredibly strange. Gideon cared for me, yes, but this proprietary thought made me jump to conclusions. Could Gideon be... I shook my head. Impossible, right? While my mind was racing, Gideon had already finished dressing me. I found myself staring blankly at his refined, attractive face. Your Majesty, if you continue to stare, we will be late for court. Why is His Majesty looking at me like that? Though his spaced-out face is also incredibly adorable. He's so handsome. Why am I suddenly finding this cold general's hidden warmth so appealing? No. What am I thinking? In Gideon's eyes, I'm probably just like a child he's raised. Why am I getting the wrong idea? I splashed water on my face and hurried out the door, my cheeks burning. Why is His Majesty in such a hurry today? Slow down. Don't fall. Hearing Gideon's anxious thought behind me only made my head spin faster. In court, the ministers knelt in their rows, with Gideon standing tall in the front. Your Majesty, the recent floods in the southeast have left the people in terrible distress. I frowned slightly as I reviewed the submitted report. Allocate a portion of the national grain reserves to the disaster area, distribute relief silver to the victims, and establish shelters. The people must not be left homeless. Your Majesty is wise, the ministers chorused. The court session was solemn, until a completely inappropriate voice suddenly rang in my ear. His Majesty's serious expression, it makes me feel restless. What? The voice was unmistakably Gideon's. I snapped my gaze to him. Outwardly, he remained perfectly impassive, joining the others in reciting, Your Majesty is wise. My face grew hot. Just what exactly was this man thinking inside his head? Your Majesty, as spring approaches, the ice and snow are melting, and the crops planted by the people are beginning to sprout. We believe next year's harvest will certainly be bountiful, said the elderly senior minister, pulling me back to the matter at hand. As I listened, a sudden idea took root. Indeed, I have decided that at the start of spring I will take a secret inspection tour to Jiangnan. I appoint General Ashford as my personal escort. Does any minister have an objection? The hall fell silent. Since I had already made the decree, no one dared to speak against it. I was only following formality. This decision was sudden, so sudden that even Gideon looked taken aback. Of course, while it was true that I wished to see the people's condition for myself, bringing Gideon along was really just an excuse. I needed to confirm his true feelings toward me. Restless. Did he mean what I thought he meant? Combined with his earlier inner confession, I want you, and the fact that I'd already confirmed he wasn't plotting my death, I now strongly suspected that Gideon Ashford was a man who loved men, and the object of his affection was, very likely, me. After the morning court, Gideon Ashford didn't return to the general's manor, but instead followed me back to the study. Why did your Majesty suddenly decide on an incognito tour? He usually consults me on such major decisions. Why not this time? While I get to guard him personally, I'm still a bit annoyed. I felt a little guilty. I couldn't exactly tell him I was doing it to confirm whether he was in love with me. I just wanted to see how the people were truly faring. Besides, I've heard the scenery in Jiangnan is quite beautiful, and I've never been. That is good. Your Majesty hasn't had a proper rest since ascending the throne. A chance to relax will be beneficial. This will be the first time we travel together for pleasure. Maybe I can even take the opportunity to get closer to His Majesty. I stared blankly at Gideon, who was unconsciously letting a subtly hopeful smile play across his lips. Was I being completely taken in by his caring inner voice? Why did my own heart feel so restless now? In the blink of an eye, the day of departure was only a few days away. After handing all state affairs over to the Prime Minister, I began preparing, or more accurately, Gideon began packing for me. For as long as I could remember, he had always insisted on handling my personal affairs himself. Your Majesty, bring this thicker outer robe. Early spring in Jiangnan can still be chilly. His Majesty's constitution is delicate. I absolutely cannot let him fall ill. I'll secretly pack a few extra just in case. Watching Gideon earnestly fold my belongings, I was struck by the contrast. While he projected a fierce, cold image in court, I found him incredibly gentle in private. Now that I could hear his thoughts, I felt a secret smugness. After all, I was the only one who truly knew what Gideon was like. Finally, the day of departure for Jiangnan arrived. An incognito tour couldn't be too extravagant, so we only had 2 carriages, one for luggage and the other for Gideon and me. As we left the palace, I couldn't resist peeking out through the small window. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd stepped beyond the palace gates, and everything on the street felt new and fascinating. Seeing my delighted expression, Gideon simply watched me from his seat. His Majesty is so adorable. Maybe we shouldn't bother with the incognito tour, and I should just kidnap him and take him straight to the general's manor. I really want to hold His Majesty. I dared not turn my face back, terrified he would see the flush of embarrassment heating my cheeks. The journey to Jiangnan would take about 2 weeks. We stopped often, lingering at markets that caught my eye. Gideon never complained. If I so much as glanced at an item, he immediately bought it. By the time we reached Jiangnan, the luggage carriage was already overflowing with delicate trinkets. Your Majesty, if you're tired, you should rest on my shoulder and sleep for a while. Gideon looked at me with concern as he noticed me nodding off. It would be so much better if he lay in my arms. I wish His Majesty would lean closer to me. Hearing him call me Your Majesty annoyed me. We were far from the palace. Using such a formal title while traveling incognito was inappropriate. From now until we return, you are to call me Young Master Cassian, and I will call you Gideon. Understood? I leaned closer to emphasize my seriousness, staring directly into his eyes. Surprised by my sudden proximity, he froze briefly, then recovered, pulling me closer with a soft chuckle. "Understood, young Master Cassian. Get some sleep now." His Majesty called me by my name. I'm so happy. Ever since he became Emperor, he stopped using my given name, and it felt so distant. His Majesty must be exhausted from traveling these past 2 days. I hope this makes him feel better. I leaned my head against Gideon's shoulder and closed my eyes. Truthfully, I hadn't been sleeping well. Each night when the carriage stopped, Gideon insisted on sharing a room with me, claiming it was for my safety. But the best inns only had one large bed, and I couldn't bear to make Gideon sleep on the floor. So, I invited him to share the bed. He initially refused, until I threatened to sleep in the carriage the next day and never come out. Gideon sighed in helpless compromise, though I could sense his heart soaring. Sharing a bed with His Majesty. I'm so excited. Should I secretly hold him while he's asleep? His Majesty's threatening look is so cute, too. Though I have 1,000 ways to make him obediently leave the carriage, I just can't bring myself to refuse him when he looks like that. I twitched my mouth. His contradiction between thought and action was nothing new. Every morning, I woke nestled in Gideon's arms. Watching his eyelashes flutter as he slept made my heart race uncontrollably. His Majesty is awake and looking at me. I really want to open my eyes, but no, I want to hold him for a little longer. I was speechless. The great general pretending to sleep just to hold me longer? Despite Gideon's presence, traveling in a carriage all day was exhausting. Gideon had the stamina to ride endlessly, but I was used to sitting behind a desk with barely any movement. Naturally, the strain was different. Fatigue wore down my spirit, and one night I had another nightmare. In the dream, I was drenched in blood, clutching Gideon's sword. My brother's corpses lay at my feet. The sky was gray. Heavy rain poured down, and blood mixed with water into a crimson river. Gideon stood far away, watching. I ran to him, but he only drifted further away. I awoke to Gideon's frantic voice. The moment he saw my eyes open, he pulled me into a tight embrace. The memory of blood, corpses, and Gideon's receding form made me sob uncontrollably. He held me close, his inner voice falling silent. In that moment, I wasn't concerned with his thoughts. Though I had won the throne, the fact that I harmed my own kin haunted me. At first, I saw their bloody faces every night, too afraid to sleep. Gideon was the only one who noticed my torment, staying by my side and helping me endure. Thanks to him, the nightmares became rare. To me, Gideon was like a guardian angel. If I called his name, he would surely come. Perhaps my feelings for him had already gone beyond those of a sovereign toward his minister, or even a friend who had faced death beside me. And judging from Gideon's inner voice, his feelings for me were the same. I woke up in the carriage. Outside, the sky was already dark, and Gideon sat across from me, quietly watching. "Young Master Cassian, we'll reach Jiangnan in a couple of hours. Once we arrive, you should get a good night's sleep before exploring." His Majesty looked so docile right after waking up. I really want to kiss him. The dim carriage lamp softened Gideon's cool, handsome features, casting a tender glow over his face. His eyes stayed fixed on me, brimming with a desire he could barely contain. Perhaps my head was still hazy from sleep, or perhaps my heart had simply grown reckless, but I impulsively acted on Gideon's inner thought. My fingers lightly gripped the front of his robe, and I tilted my head up to softly brush my lips against his. The kiss was fleeting. I pulled back quickly, my eyes still clouded with sleep. Gideon, usually so composed, stared at me in shock. Behind that surprise, however, smoldered a storm of raw desire and tightly bound restraint. I'm going to lose control. The very next moment, Gideon seized me in his arms. His broad frame blocked out the lamplight as his mouth descended on mine with an intensely possessive kiss. I didn't push him away. Instead, I let his breath invade mine, trembling beneath the heat of his fervor. The long, consuming kiss left me breathless, and only then did Gideon finally let me go. I slumped weakly against his chest, my lashes wet, my eyes glistening with unshed tears from the overwhelming sensation. Am I dreaming? Did His Majesty really kiss me? If His Majesty initiated it, does that mean he likes me too? He likes me? His disbelief rang in my ears. I could barely catch my breath, yet when I met his deep gaze, something inside me gave way. Just for this moment, I told myself I wasn't the Emperor, but Cassian Hawthorne, and he wasn't the great general, but simply Gideon. "Young Master Cassian, He began to speak, but the coachman's voice suddenly interrupted from outside the carriage. "Young Master Cassian, General Ashford, we've arrived at the inn." Understood. "Park the carriage and get some rest yourself," Gideon replied at once. Snapping back to myself, I quickly straightened, hopped down from the carriage ahead of him, and strode toward the inn, fanning my flushed face as though nothing had happened. But Gideon had clearly noticed. His faint smile followed me, quiet and knowing. He's so adorable. I truly love His Majesty. Hearing that thought, my heart felt as though it were about to melt. I rushed to book the room, then, without waiting for Gideon, grabbed my change of clothes and headed straight to the inn's bathing chambers. This was the largest inn in all of Jiangnan, and the bathing rooms were private. The accompanying palace maid had prepared the bath water, and I immediately sank into the tub. The hot steam made my head feel light. I recalled the kiss in the carriage, my heart pounding wildly. What I did felt like a confession. How was I going to face him later? I was so embarrassed. I submerged my entire body, leaving only my eyes and nose exposed. I don't know how long I stayed, until Gideon came and knocked on the door, bringing me back to reality. "Young Master Cassian, are you not done yet? His Majesty has been soaking for half an hour. Why hasn't he come out yet?" I'm getting impatient. I haven't seen His Majesty for half an hour. I miss him so much. I heard Gideon's inner voice even through the door. I shot up from the tub. "I'm coming out right now. You go back to the room and wait for me." After hearing Gideon's steps recede, I hastily pulled on my underclothes. I returned to the room. I'd been too flustered earlier to notice, but this was certainly the best inn. Even the bed was larger than the previous ones. Seeing me enter, Gideon stood up, took my hand, and led me to sit on the bed. "Wait, why did this feel so routine now?" "Young Master Cassian, it's late. You should get a good rest tonight. I want to hold His Majesty. He smells so good. I also have something I want to tell him in a moment." Listening to Gideon's thoughts, my heart leaped. He wanted to talk. "All right, I won't read tonight then." I skillfully settled into the inner side of the bed. Gideon then intuitively went to blow out the main lamp, leaving only a small light on the table emitting a faint glow. Aided by the soft light, I watched Gideon get into bed and move closer to me. "Young Master Cassian, I have something I want to say to you." I looked at his burning gaze, my heart beating fiercely. "Go on." Gideon embraced me, burying his head in the crook of my neck. His voice was no longer his usual calm self. This time, I didn't want to rely on his inner voice. I wanted to hear him say it aloud. "Your Majesty, what I am about to say may be presumptuous. Please do not fault your servant." I leaned back slightly from his embrace, adjusting the distance until I could clearly see his face. I was nervous, but I nodded, signaling him to continue. "Cassian, when the late Emperor first brought you to the military camp, I thought you were just a sheltered prince, naive and out of touch, someone who talked big but couldn't solve real problems. But time showed me I was wrong. When I watched you distribute food to the common people, stroke the heads of refugee children, confidently reassure the citizens during the day, yet secretly weep at night, I knew I had found a sovereign I could follow for life. I don't know when it started, but when I saw you show your bright smile to others, I felt such jealousy. I even wanted to hide you away, though I knew I couldn't. I realized early on that you were destined to be a great ruler, because your concern for the people was genuine. You have your noble dream, and I would carve a path of blood for you to help you fulfill that dream. Cassian, you are the sovereign of the entire country. The face you show the people will always be your strong, honorable side. But I want to keep all your fragility and sorrow privately, because that is the side only I am meant to see. I want to be by your side forever, not as a sovereign and minister, but as a partner. Cassian, are you willing?" I looked at Gideon's earnest expression, and tears streamed down my face. Gideon gently wiped them away with his thumb. He wasn't confessing to the Emperor, but to Cassian, the man. I threw myself into Gideon's embrace, my voice muffled. "Yes, I want to be with you forever, too. Gideon, don't ever leave me." I lifted my head from his shoulder, tears still clinging to my lashes. Gideon's inner voice chimed in again. "His Majesty crying is so adorable. I want to pin him down and tease him. I want to see him crying and begging me. Now that I've confessed, I think I'm allowed to do this." "Wait!" Before I could even react, Gideon flipped us over, pinning me beneath him. The next second, a fervent kiss descended. "Your Majesty, you are mine." At last. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. My head was spinning, and all I could do was weakly grasp Gideon's loose inner robe. In the midst of the passion, Gideon leaned close to my ear, his hot breath washing over me. Two voices overlapped. "Cassian, I love you." "Cassian, I love you." When I finally woke up the next day, the sun was already high in the sky. The moment I opened my eyes, I was met with Gideon Ashford's intensely satisfied expression. I tried to shift, but my lower back ached fiercely. Supporting myself with a groan, I gave Gideon a mournful look. The Emperor was so fierce, but the way he cried and begged for mercy yesterday was so adorable, I really couldn't hold back. "Your Majesty, shall I massage your back for you?" I noticed the mismatch between his words and his thoughts, and with a huff, I flopped onto my stomach. After all, my back truly was screaming. As Gideon's large hands pressed and kneaded, a wave of relief washed over me. His Majesty's waist is so slender, I could never stop kneading it. I'm so lucky to be the only one who has ever touched this delicate waist hidden by clothes. But what if I tease the Emperor too much and he gets angry? Why isn't the Emperor saying anything? Am I pressing in an uncomfortable spot? Even though neither of us had spoken, Gideon's inner voice made a sweet warmth bubble up inside me. I couldn't help but let out a laugh. "What are you laughing about, Your Majesty? Did I hit a ticklish spot? Where was I pressing just now?" I rolled over, hooked my arms around Gideon's neck, straddled him, and kissed him deeply. "Nothing at all," I murmured. "I just suddenly realized how much I adore you." My eyes crinkled with my smile, the love I felt for him impossible to hide. "What should I do? Can we just not go back to the palace? Can we stay here for the rest of our lives?" He wrapped his arms around my waist and, unable to help himself, kissed me again. "Your Majesty, does this count as insubordination?" Gideon teased, a playful smile tugging at his lips. I love snuggling with the Emperor so much. I love all of His Majesty's different expressions. "Well, what am I going to do?" I chuckled. "I can hardly throw you in the dungeon." I was held tightly in Gideon's embrace, letting him do as he pleased. After lying together for a while longer, my stomach rumbled loudly. "Gideon, I'm starving." "I'll go downstairs and bring your meal up, Your Majesty." With that, Gideon started to get out of bed. His Majesty probably can't get out of bed right now. It's my fault for being too rough yesterday. I gnashed my teeth. I, the Emperor of a great nation, eating a meal in bed the very first time I was in a new place? If that got out, wouldn't the common people laugh themselves sick? "No need," I declared, forcing the words out. "I'll go down to eat myself." Clutching the bed frame, I shakily pulled myself to my feet. The moment I stood up, my legs went weak and I nearly collapsed. Gideon was there in a flash, steadying me. "Just wait here in the room, Your Majesty, and I'll fetch it." "No, I want to go down and eat," I insisted, giving him a stubborn look. Gideon studied my childish expression, thought for a moment, and then scooped me up into his arms. "Ah!" I gasped, startled, quickly latching onto his neck for dear life, afraid of falling. "I can't help it. His Majesty is too cute." I couldn't resist a little prank. "Since you can't walk comfortably right now, I'll just carry you downstairs then." He gave me a small bounce for emphasis. My face flushed crimson. How had I never noticed Gideon was so mischievous before? Oh, right. I hadn't been able to hear his thoughts before. Gideon carried me downstairs. From our clothing, others could tell we weren't common folk, so they didn't comment much. I sat next to Gideon, and just as he did in the palace, he placed all my favorite dishes onto my plate. Unknowingly, Gideon had nurtured me a little. I'd put on some healthy weight and was feeling better than ever. In the afternoon, Gideon held me while we napped for a while longer. My current physical state made going out to sightsee utterly impractical. We were going to be here for a month anyway. Missing a day or two wouldn't hurt. My body felt significantly better, so I decided it was time to go out. Gideon Ashford was actually a little sulky about it. This is so annoying. His Majesty hasn't let me touch him for 2 days. I can only steal little kisses. What's so great about going outside anyway? We should just stay in the inn. Is His Majesty tired of me? Does he not want to be intimate anymore? I rubbed my forehead. Had Gideon forgotten that the whole point of this trip was for me to travel incognito? Though his heart clearly wasn't in it, when it came time to leave, Gideon firmly took my hand. I was a bit nervous at first, but then I heard Gideon's thoughts. Nobody knows us here anyway, so I can be reckless. Back at the palace, I won't be able to do this. I'm going to stick to His Majesty the whole time. He was right. We wouldn't be able to act like this once we returned to the palace. A wave of disappointment washed over me, but I squeezed Gideon's hand tightly in return. Here, no one knew I was the Emperor, and no one knew Gideon was a general. We were just a loving, ordinary couple lost in the misty rain of Jiangnan. With that thought, I pulled Gideon along, weaving through the streets, letting everything else fall away. It was as if the world consisted only of the two of us. We shared 2 candied haw skewers in the busy night market. We held each other close, watching the moon from the roof of the inn. We kissed passionately in a small boat on the lake. Happy times always passed too quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the day for our return to the palace arrived. Inside the carriage, I was glum, curled up in Gideon's arms. It went by so fast. When we get back, I won't be able to stick to His Majesty all day long, but I should still be able to find a way to sleep with His Majesty at night, right? The Emperor's bed is much bigger than the one at the inn. I looked up at Gideon and sighed softly. Gideon, would you be willing to be my Empress? Wouldn't that be too much of a compromise for you? I only want to stay by your side, Cassian, he replied, his gaze intense. I don't care about titles or status. What? Is His Majesty going to officially title me? Well, it's a bit strange, but I certainly won't reject it. I estimate that once we get back, the ministers will definitely pressure me to take concubines again. What am I going to do, Gideon? To be honest, even before I was with Gideon, I never wanted concubines. I just wanted to focus on ruling. Now that I had Gideon, the thought of taking others was even less appealing. Your Majesty, you are the Son of Heaven. If you don't want to, no one can force you. If His Majesty says he's abolishing the entire harem, I'd be the first one to cheer. The Emperor would be mine and mine alone. I nodded. Abolishing the harem wasn't out of the question. Who cares what they think? I only wanted Gideon for this lifetime. I burrowed my head into Gideon's chest, and he held me tightly in return. His Majesty is really so adorable. I love him so much. At the very first morning court session after returning to the palace, I announced my decision to abolish the imperial harem. Aside from Gideon Ashford, every minister was utterly stunned. Your Majesty, this must not be done. Producing heirs is the sacred duty of the royal family. This cannot be ignored. Please reconsider, Your Majesty. If you abolish the harem, what will the people think of you? As I listened to the ministers all speaking at once, my head began to ache. They're making things so difficult for His Majesty. I'd rather see them all dead. I caught sight of the faint anger in Gideon's eyes, and my mood instantly lifted a little. The Emperor is the Son of Heaven. If you refuse to obey His Majesty's decree, are you not guilty of defiance? The moment Gideon's voice rang out, the entire hall fell silent. Your Majesty, I support any decision you make, as long as it benefits the Empire. I will follow you forever. And if anyone dares to defy His Majesty, I won't hesitate to send the Imperial Guard to pay their families a visit. My man was just too handsome. As long as you don't hurt yourself, I'll support anything you wish to do. Warmth spread through my chest. Without another word, I drafted the Imperial Edict on the spot. With Gideon so steadfast, I couldn't afford to falter. In just a few strokes, the decree to abolish the harem was completed. The ministers were, of course, dissatisfied, but once the edict was issued, none of them dared say another word. 2 years passed. The country was governed better than ever, and the ministers gradually realized that the absence of a harem caused no harm. They eventually let the matter drop. As for Gideon and me, our bond only grew stronger. He would always slip quietly into my chambers late at night, and I had long grown used to it. One evening, I deliberately wore my inner robes loose, waiting on the bed for his arrival. When he pushed open the door, he froze, his breath catching. Your Majesty looks far too tempting like this. I laughed softly and opened my arms to him. Without the slightest hesitation, Gideon strode toward me. Outside, the palace maids wisely closed the door. Perhaps even the ministers had long guessed at the truth between us. But so what? The moonlight bathed the courtyard in silver, the night still and quiet. Inside, however, the scene was filled with passion and beauty.